Dave Kenworthy here. It's the 19th of the 4th, 2022. And I'm going to pose a riddle in this video. Can anybody explain what's happening here, why it's happening, what's the reason for it? And it's a calculation effectively proving that Professor Thom was 100% correct when he calculated his megalithic yard as 32.64 inches. And that megalithic yard has been created against a version of pi that's been smoothed and a version of root 3 that's been smoothed, and also a version of root 2 that's been smoothed. And when I say smoothed, I mean we're taking 52 divided by 30 for root 3, and we're taking 99 over 70 for root 2, and there are other options for these values. But the reason why this calculation works is because of the value of pi that's being used, and that's the riddle. What is the value of pi in this calculation? And I'll be posting it in a few weeks, but in giving you time to have a think about it and see if you can work it out for yourself. And it's very easy to show that this calculation is in fact Egyptian, because we're going to work from 100 hecat. And the reason why it works as a clue is that the Egyptians knew the results of using root 2 and root 3, multiplying them together. They knew what they were getting, and they were using that number to create their measures, and not root 2 or root 3 individually. But they knew what those values were, obviously, because they were multiplying root 2 by root 2. They knew they were getting 2, but they were putting these calculations into units of area. And that's why they knew when they calculated the square megalithic yard, it gave 1066.66 recurring units. They knew this. They may not have known the value for root 2 and root 3 exactly, but they knew what the result would be when they were multiplied together. So this is why when we get our square roots that are very complex numbers, the Egyptians may not have known those complex numbers, but they knew when those numbers were multiplied together what the result was. And they were starting with the hecat. In many of these calculations, they start with the hecat. And in this instance, we're looking at 100 hecat, which is 64 times 100. So we put that in there. We divide by 6 and we get this number. And they knew that number. And they knew it was being produced by squaring this number, even if they didn't know what this number was exactly. And we can show that they knew this by calculating the megalithic inch. Now there are 40 megalithic inches in a megalithic yard, and the megalithic yard is stated in inches. Now this calculation is just based on pure number, but now we're going to have to put a unit in, and the unit is the imperial inch. So we put an imperial inch in the calculation. And if we divide that by 40, we get that for the megalithic inch. Now Thom had it at 0.816. Not a problem. But this calculation is using real root 2 and real root 3. And it's demonstrating that they knew what these numbers were within the context of this calculation. So we go for root 2 and we have to insert the function square root, and we put 2 in there, we get the square root of 2. And the same for root 3, insert function square root, put 3 in there, we get the square root of 3. And here is the megalithic inch, the ratio between root 2 and root 3. Exactly the same number. How on earth did these people do it? This is the riddle. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it. I've only just worked this out the other day. And I knew it was going to work. As soon as I read about the design of one of the pyramids being based on root 2 and root 3, I looked at the pyramid itself. I realised immediately that they were telling us that they were using the ratio of root 2 divided by root 3 in their calculations. And when I looked at what it was, I realised immediately that it was a megalithic inch. But what is the version of pi that we're using to create this megalithic yard? And the whole idea of this, using 6400, is that it's an Egyptian creation using 100 Hecat. And if we can reconcile this version of Egyptian pi to this calculation of the megalithic yard, we can prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Professor Alexander Thom was exactly correct when he worked out his megalithic yard. And there are reasons why it's 0.816 inches and not this number that we're seeing here. So I'm going to leave it as a riddle. Why is it happening? What's the version of pi that's being used? And how on earth can the ratio between root 2 and root 3, the real root 2 and root 3, calculated by this Excel spreadsheet, how on earth can that equal this Egyptian version of the Egyptian megalithic yard of 32.65986324, and when we divide it by 40, we get the ratio. It's just incredible. So I'll stop there and see what you think about it, see if anybody can work it out.